Because the ultimate killer of Blockbuster was not Netflix. The ultimate killer of Blockbuster.
This is a YouTube channel. The fact that you work with Mr.
Right.
Beast.
So he held up my book in this video and said, read this book, post up a video telling us why education is freedom, and you have a chance to win one of 10 $10,000 scholarships.
Were there ever any challenges there working with Hollywood?
Of course.
Well, Jim, thank you for coming on the show today. I've been dying to get you on here because of your vast experience being a CEO of these major corporations over the last several years. Is what a feat. I mean, is that something that you set out to do, is be a CEO of, I guess you've done 7-Eleven, Blockbuster, Fresh and Easy. Is that a goal that you had to be just a CEO of one of them, or how did all this come to?
Joe, I didn't know how to spell CEO. I had no idea as a kid growing up what the kinds of opportunities would be out there and what would unfold. So no, I set my sights for the highest target that I could see as a kid, which was maybe if I was really lucky, I could be a teacher, or
Right.
if I was even really lucky, then maybe a lawyer or a doctor or something like that, a professional. But business was never on the radar screen.
Hmm. Well, you struck it big. So now you are the CEO of 7-Eleven, president and CEO of 7-Eleven from 2000 to 2005, chairman and CEO of Blockbuster. Carl Icahn brought you in 2007 to 2011, and then CEO of Fresh and Easy from 2013 to 2015. So for somebody that set out not to be a CEO, you sure screwed that up.
I did. I really messed it up. I really wanted to be an astronaut
Yeah.
and totally fell short of that mark.
Yeah, well, when you're going to screw up like that, but you did have a couple of big achievements. You've worked with Snoop Dogg. That was a big one, probably my favorite. And then, this is a YouTube channel, and the fact that you work with Mr. Beast,
Yep.
that kid was he 26 now?
26. Yeah. Pretty
26.
amazing young man. And
300 million views, and you did with him. Matter of fact, can you talk about the scholarship that you're working with him, please?
sure. Yeah. I was very fortunate to meet his head of philanthropy and to be able to talk with them about my book, the new book called Education is Freedom. And the opportunity came about because Mr. Beast, Jimmy, and Darren, his head of Beast Philanthropy, were doing a program to teach teachers. Basically, they took the 800 teachers to the Ron Clark Academy in Atlanta to teach them basically the methods that were working for improved engagement. And so he said, well, what if we partnered up on a scholarship? So my immediate answer without any hesitation was yes. And so we created 10 $10,000 scholarships, and then they also, Beast Philanthropy also provided a full ride scholarship to one student, and we offered it up worldwide. So he held up my book in his video and said, read this book, post up a video telling us why education is freedom, and you have a chance to win one of 10 $10,000 scholarships.
I saw the video. It's amazing. It's amazing that you got access to him because having 300 million subscribers doesn't hurt. I fell a little bit short on that. So
Joe, you know what the most amazing part is, and I've been as I've been doing media around the book, I talk about this a lot because
Mhm.
there's a lot of fear out there as it relates to technology and social media, and oh my
Yeah.
gosh, what's happening to our kids, and it's all they do is they spend time blah blah blah. Maybe we should ban TikTok. And so there's all this negativity around it, and I love using the Jimmy Donaldson story because
Mhm.
here's a kid that started at 14 with this new medium and created an audience, built from scratch an audience of,
Yeah.
as you said, almost 300 million subscribers now.
Mhm.
And you know what he's doing? He's not just monetizing that. He's not just getting rich. He's doing pretty well, but
Yeah.
what he's doing is using that platform to teach. And so he is actually teaching millions of kids all over the world the power of philanthropy, the power of
Yeah.
giving back. It's it's just a beautiful thing to watch. And I honestly feel privileged to be able to partner with him because I think you're going to continue to see great things coming from this young man
Yeah.
and demonstrating the power of reaching young people where they live, which is in these new technologies.
Well, he's got the ear of the younger generation. I mean, he's very powerful, and the stuff he does. I don't know if you saw that what he did with the water in Africa. That everybody was struggling to get water. He went over and took the equipment and struck water in several villages. Just impressive what he does.
Oh, yeah.
I'm amazed the amount of hate he gets, but um, I don't believe it's just incredible to me what he does. And we're going to post about your scholarship. I'm going to put it at the bottom so everybody can find it down below at the end of the video. They'll be able to see it. Okay.
Great. Yeah. The best part of the scholarship is actually having thousands of videos with young people telling young people the power of learning.
Yeah.
It's a great thing.
It was a great idea. And I do want to talk about your book, Education is Freedom, but I think it's important to kind of start with your beginning because I've watched some videos. The way we started in life is very similar, in as far as where we grew up and how we grew up. And so can you kind of give us your backstory of, where you started, your family and all that, please?
Sure. It's a pretty simple story. And as with yours, it, started out with some pretty humble beginnings, but that's not that unusual. There's a lot of kids that grow up that way.
Mm-hmm.
And the story I told before about I didn't have a clear path to the C-suite. I had no idea what the C-suite was because I had no exposure to business whatsoever. Growing up in a small town, I didn't think I'd be able to ever go to college because no one in the family did. But what I discovered is that anybody, this is America, anyone in this country, and I don't care what your socioeconomic background is, your gender, your race, etc. Granted, it's going to be a little more difficult for some than others,
Sure.
but it's doable. It is absolutely doable. And to me, the secret to that path to unlocking doors was clearly education. And I think that is the great equalizer of all kinds of issues, be them wealth, be them gender, race, anything.
Yeah.
The more you know, the more you can do. It's really as simple as that. And I learned that thankfully at a very early age. And it unlocked doors and continues to this day. The power of lifelong learning continues to unlock opportunity. I mean, one last thing. I mean, who would have thought somebody that looks like me at my age would be a social media influencer partnering with Mr. Beast, right? It's unheard of.
It's
But the
incredible.
more you know, the more you can
Yeah.
do.
Yeah. Well, to your point, knowledge is something that nobody can take away from you. It's
Right.
yours. You,
Exactly.
you own it. Were you a good student in high school?
I was a pretty good student, but not naturally. I was not one of those smart kids. I had a lot of friends that were. They didn't have to study. They just walk into class. They were naturally intelligent.
Mm-hmm.
I worked my butt off,
Yeah.
basically, because I knew it wasn't going to come naturally to me. I really had to work hard at it. But as with anything, I love listening to Michael Jordan or Tiger Woods. Tom Brady. They laugh about people thinking Tom Brady. I've heard him recently saying, "Oh yeah, people call me the GOAT." You realize how hard I had to work? I
Yeah.
was not naturally the GOAT. I worked at being the GOAT, and it's true, and it applies to anything, whether it's professional sports or grammar school.
Yep. And you weren't born with a silver spoon in your mouth. You were working during high school too, right?
Oh yeah, yeah. I had a couple of jobs. I worked at McDonald's. Wasn't making enough money at McDonald's, so I took on an extra job of driving a produce truck.
Oh, good Lord.
So I'd do the night shift at McDonald's and then wake up at 5 a.m. and load a produce truck and deliver to restaurants and stores, and then come back and try to catch a few hours of sleep and go and do my night shift at McDonald's.
God. How many years did you do that all through high school?
Yeah, not all through high school, but the last few years, I started working at about 15. And I guess back then we didn't have the scholarship availability that we have
Right.
today. Schools didn't have the huge endowments that they have. And so I knew if I wanted to go to college, I wasn't going to be able to count on scholarships. I had to get out there and pay for it. And Joe, there's an interesting narrative out there that college is too expensive today. That's
Mhm.
baloney. Because it was when I graduated from college, it was $10,000 for room, board, and tuition, and in 2024 dollars, that would have been 60.
Yeah.
And then today, even though school, somebody could say, well, but today it's more like 80 for a really good school. Yeah, but the discount rate at those schools is as much as 50%, which means
Right.
it's really not 80 for the average person. It's like
Right.
40.
Yeah.
So schools just it's always been expensive, but it's an investment, and it's an investment you make in
It
yourself.
is. It
Yeah,
is.
with a dividend that pays returns the rest of your life.
Right. Do you think that everybody should be going to college or just a select few?
Well, this is a really interesting question. There's a lot of discussion about that. I
Yeah.
do a lot of radio and TV, and they're like, well, college is not for everyone. My
Yeah.
retort to that is college may not be for everyone, but opportunity is.
Yeah.
And most opportunity comes from the breadth of knowledge that we can accumulate. So, look, if a kid really grows up and says, I want to be a plumber so bad I can't stand it, then we should let them go down that vocational path. But my advice to even a young man that wants to be a plumber or a young woman that wants to be a plumber, my advice
Mhm.
is still at least get an associate's degree, because at some point you're going to have to manage your life. And the
Yeah.
more knowledge you have will make you a better plumber. And, let's face it, maybe you want to run the plumbing company, or maybe you want to own the plumbing company. And so the more education that you have, the better you'll be, even at your vocation.
Yeah. Yeah, I agree. There's somebody made a comment the other day. They asked me the question. Well, that's where I actually got it from. And I said, well, it's probably not for everybody. It's very similar to your answer, but they said, well, when I go on LinkedIn and apply for a job, it's asking for my degree there. And, so I'm like, oh, well, you know, it's going to be good to have some form of education.
The example I use is when Peter Thiel stands up and says, "Oh, just go be a coder, and you don't really need to go to college." That's like Michael Jordan standing up and saying, just go play basketball. You'll be fine. You know, 0.001% of you will
Yeah.
make it to the NBA. The
Yeah.
rest of you are going to have to struggle if you didn't follow that more traditional path and get a
Mm-hmm.
degree.
Jim, when we're recruiting agents, we have a commercial brokerage company in Los Angeles called Commercial Brokers International, and we have agents that come in, and most of them have a college education. Some of them don't, and they're all doing pretty well anyway. But what I really push them on, the people that have education, is the alumni. Really push that sphere of influence, that alumni. I mean, I know if you're in Texas, so when we were up running our company in Texas, and I go up with a Texan, and they had a college alumni that I was up against, I didn't stand a chance.
Yeah. Yeah. The
It was
network
just,
is real. There,
yeah.
Joe, there's so many other, well, I'll give you an example of that network. I was in a meeting in Tokyo one time, and I had a young man approach me and say, "Hey, you look familiar." And I said, "Yeah, I'm sure." And he said, "No, no, seriously, I know you." And he came back a little bit later and he said, "You sat 3 chairs behind me in Cora County at Columbia Business School." Now,
Okay.
here's a young man now who was leading 7-Eleven Korea. I was at the time chief financial officer of 7-Eleven Korea. He went on to be one of the largest licensees of 7-Eleven in Korea, and then became chairman of Lotte, one of the largest conglomerates,
Oh, we
one of
did.
the top 5 companies in Korea.
Yeah.
And that relationship, and he's still a dear friend today, that relationship is something but for Columbia University that focuses on that global network,
Yeah.
I wouldn't have the benefit of that and many other relationships, both domestically and internationally, that came from that network of Columbia Business School grads and
Mm.
friends.
Now, did you get your master's at Columbia?
I did. I did.
Okay. Yeah.
I was very fortunate to get in. Small
Yeah.
miracle that they let me in.
Well, it's worked out well for you. Do you think you need to get your master's to be a CEO of a major company like this now?
Here's the way I look at it. It's all about differentiation. You
Right.
know, we're like a product,
Yeah.
and people forget that. At the
Hmm.
end of the day, how did I become a CEO? Well, I had a solid education, and then when I got into the job, I kept learning. So I kept switching from finance to operations. I kept saying, raising my hand, saying, let me take this challenge over here. I know technically I'm not qualified for it, but I want to learn that new area. And that differentiation that I built from my academic background to my professional experience ended up when it came time to say who's going to be CEO of 7-Eleven. If you looked at my background, it was almost a certainty that I was going to stand head and shoulders above peers that were also candidates for that same role. Not because I'm any smarter or any better, even, but because I had methodically differentiated myself against anybody that I would have competed with. Now, I can't say, Joe, I did that on purpose. I wish I could say I was smart enough to have planned that
Sure.
out. But looking back, I look at people today and they say, well, should I go to business school? It's a lot of money. It's about differentiating yourself. And if you do plan to have a corporate career, or the other thing, this is something people forget a lot, even if you're an entrepreneur, let's say I went out and I built a $1 billion company. Well, at some point, I'm going to want to make it a $2 billion or $3 billion company. What's that going to require? It's going to require financing. When I'm on an investor roadshow, I can promise you they're going to be looking at my resume.
Yeah,
When I
absolutely.
stand in front of a group of bankers saying I want to borrow money, I promise you're going to be looking at my resume.
Yeah.
So those elements of your resume that differentiate you and give you credibility will help you whether you're in a big corporation or whether you're an entrepreneur just looking for resources, looking for investors.
Absolutely. How long? So you were the CEO of 7-Eleven from 2000 to 2005. How long were you at 7-Eleven before you became CEO?
Well, I was 21 years in total,
Okay.
so it was about 15 years
Yeah.
in various roles. And as I said, I started on the planning side, strategic planning, and then moved into operations, and then back into finance, became CFO, back into operations, became chief operating officer. So I was never in any sort of pigeonholed job throughout my career. I always was able to move freely back and forth. And again, that only comes through the power of education because if you specialize too early, you say,
Hmm.
well, I'm going to be an accountant.
Yeah.
Well, if you don't have general management experience, it's going to be tough to get out of that vertical of accounting, or vice versa. If you're just let's say my undergraduate was poli sci, I was poli sci major. That wasn't going to do me any good in finance. So that business degree for me was pretty
Yeah.
important.
Well, then now, which job was it that your boss was trying to let you go and you kept coming to work? Was that seven? I love that story.
I know. Um, Early on at 7-Eleven, I I have to share the whole story. I'd have to go back, but every job from McDonald's to working at a factory, um, to my first white collar job, I kept encountering other people that were like, "Hey, you're working too hard. Slow it down. Don't
Mhm.
and
Yep.
it's that fear that I kept encountering all along the way. You
Yeah.
wouldn't think that would show up in a professional role, but I've had bosses that were uncomfortable with the work I was doing because maybe I was asked to work on a special project. And that's what happened at 7-Eleven. I was asked to work on a special project for the CFO. I didn't report to him, I was reporting to the chief operating officer at the time. And my immediate boss wasn't happy about that, didn't know what I was working on. It was a secret project related to a restructuring of the company, and I, happened to have a tool set that made me a valuable member of that team. to work on that. But I couldn't really discuss it with my boss. Well, my boss didn't like that at all. So he eventually called me in, gave me a performance review, and basically took away my admin, took away my title, encouraged me to resign. And I just kept coming back to work, as you said. I, I went home. Now, I did that night. I did stop on the way home at a 7-Eleven, and I bought an Employment Weekly, one of those old newspapers that had jobs. So I think I might be in trouble here. I might have to start looking for a job. But the next day, I showed up at the office and kept going back. And 6 months later, I was still there. I got promoted. He had been terminated, and we had a new company coming out of our restructuring.
Gotcha. That was such incredible. We had an agent once that was just not doing well, and I let him go, and he kept coming in. Finally, I had to hide his desk. I actually took his desk and put it in another office, another company's office down the hall. I said, "Listen, I just need this for a couple days, okay?" And that was, and he'd come in and sit around. But he just needed to go do something else. Commercial real estate wasn't his thing. That was something. Now, when you went on to Blockbuster, this has to be an interesting story, I'm sure. I want to eventually get into all your contributions at these companies, but I want to kind of give a history. So Carl Icahn, how'd you meet Carl Icahn?
So it's really an important element of the Blockbuster story.
Yeah.
I believed after leaving 7-Eleven, I believed in the power of technology to transform companies.
Mm-hmm.
In spite of all the rumors and all the perception about Netflix and Blockbuster, I arrived at Blockbuster to try to bring technology to the company and help it transition. Now, I also recognize that technology and that transformation was not going to be easy, and it was not going to be easily done in a public company environment where you have to meet expectations quarter by quarter by quarter. So my plan was to approach private equity, raise the money, take Blockbuster private, do the transformation necessary outside of the glare of public reporting, and then bring the company back into the public markets once we had completed the transition. Had I done that, and I was on the roadshow talking to investors and private equity firms when I met Carl Icahn, because I was in literally an investor's office. He saw the plan and he said, "Wow, this is great. You ought to be talking to Carl." And he picked up the phone, and 20 minutes later, I'm in Carl Icahn's office. Now, Carl convinced me, public, private, it doesn't matter. Just join the company. Forget about taking it private. Just join the company. He was already a shareholder. He said, "Look, I'm the financial guy. You're the operating guy. Trust me on this." And I did. Now, neither of us had a crystal ball.
Right.
But had we had a crystal ball, we would have seen the financial markets completely collapse in 18 months from that point. 12 to 18 months. Financial markets would completely collapse. Had we taken it private and refinanced Blockbuster, we would have refinanced $1 billion of debt at about 5.5–6% interest versus what happened 18 months later, which is the banks collapsed, Lehman Brothers went out of business, and we had a really hard time getting that debt refinanced. So that would have been, if you were to say, what would you do over again? Well, if I had a crystal ball, I would have taken Blockbuster private, refinanced it at a very favorable interest rate, never looked back, would have blown right through the financial crisis without batting an eyelash, and repositioned the company.
Yeah. It was an amazing company. I think there's so much gossip running around about it, and nobody really knew, I think, what happened. And
very few people know the real story. And the saddest part of that is there's so much learning from the Blockbuster story.
Oh, yeah.
It's a beautiful case study of the importance of change, embracing change, both from the technology side, but more importantly, dealing with change as it relates to the macro environment. Financial crisis happens. What do you do? How do you respond? Do you cave? Do you give in? Do you liquidate the company? or do you try to find a strategic partner and take it to the next level? So all of these dynamics make the Blockbuster case study actually far more interesting than most people see just by looking at the surface and saying they missed the technology boat.
Yeah, I mean, you're right about change though, because I see a lot of these, these big commercial real estate companies, and they're not evolving fast enough, and some of the younger brokers are looking at smaller firms where they can go out and use some more technology that's available now. And so there's a lot of change coming in commercial real estate, and I think the big companies, they're going to have to learn quickly. They're going to have to make some changes.
They are. In fact,
Yeah.
I've coined an expression as part of the book. When I wrote the book, I have a whole chapter on change and keeping up with change and the importance of it.
Mm-hmm.
And I coined the expression that change equals opportunity.
Mm-hmm.
CEO, the acronym CEO.
Yeah.
Yes, it stands for chief executive, but it also really, the role of the CEO is to embrace change, and change
Yeah.
does equal opportunity. So you mentioned real estate. I'm fascinated right now with what's going on in commercial real estate. New York City's great example. They're taking these office buildings, 60-story office buildings,
Mm-hmm.
and converting them to residential and mixed
Yeah.
use.
Yeah.
And it's a fascinating adaptation to change, because post COVID, everybody said, well, we can do this hybrid work at the office a couple of days and at home, so companies don't need as much square footage of office. So
Mm-hmm.
what do you do with this commercial real estate? Well, you convert it to residential,
Yeah.
because that demand is there.
Yeah.
So I think as you said, some people will pivot. They'll
Yeah.
see that change equals opportunity, and they'll pivot and they'll take that chance and they'll respond to that change. Others will say, no, 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 it's going to come back, and they'll hang on, you know,
Yeah. Yeah.
as,
Hold
as
on for
long
dear
as they
life.
can by
Yeah.
their fingertips.
Yeah. Yeah. No, I think there's a lot of opportunity coming for the people that are willing to make the changes. There's usually opportunity in change, but you have to be able to recognize it. A lot of bigger companies, it's tough.
Exactly.
So now you were CEO of Fresh and Easy from 2013. So you had a couple of years there, 2013 to 2015. How did that come into place?
Yeah, Fresh and Easy was was an experiment. Basically, it was Tesco, the British retailer,
Yep.
came to the United States to reinvent convenience retail, if you will. They wanted to have a higher quality food offering, fresh foods, natural organic foods, all in a small box environment. So Tesco, the British retailer, was trying to do this in the United States. Meanwhile, coincidentally, Whole Foods had acquired a company called Wild Oats, their largest
Mm,
competitor.
yep.
So Wild Oats, the FTC wouldn't allow Whole Foods to acquire the intellectual property, the name Whole Food, Wild Oats.
Right.
Too many W's.
Yeah.
So I had an opportunity, an inbound call from someone who had acquired that brand, saying, would you like to do something? Is there something you think you could do with it? And so here was the idea: create a 7-Eleven meets Whole Foods kind of new approach to convenience retail. Healthy, better for you, small box store. So meanwhile, Tesco was trying to do this with a brand called Fresh and Easy. We had acquired the Wild Oats brand. Now, the idea of bringing these two things together sounded like a good solution, but I also needed a better cost of goods, because the cost for organic, natural and organic foods tends to be very high. So we approached Walmart with the Whole Foods brand idea and said, how would you like to partner on an organic food that, with your scale and ours, we could provide your customers natural and organic foods at mainstream prices under the Wild Oats brand? They loved the idea. We partnered together. We rolled it out together in Walmart stores. And that was going to be the cost of goods advantage that we would bring then to our small box stores under the Wild Oats brand.
Gotcha.
Sounds like a beautiful model, right? All coming together. So we've got this deal with Walmart. We acquired the Fresh and Easy stores from Tesco. They were glad to be done with them because they had been losing a boatload of money on it. And now the idea was, let's bring it all together in these small, efficient stores throughout California, Arizona, and Nevada. That was a great plan, we thought. And then Walmart decided that they were going to pivot. They brought in a whole new management team, and the new management team said, well, why are we building this Wild Oats brand? Why don't we build our own? So they basically bought us out of their contract, and they renamed all of our products. We had about 200 items at that point and growing. They renamed them all Great Value Organic, and we were done. So that caused us to lose the cost of goods advantage, and we kind of shelved the brand for now. And we'll see. Maybe we'll have another shot at it down the road.
Yeah, that's tough to be that close and to get the rug pulled out from underneath you like that.
It happens. It's business.
There's one thing, Jim, they can't say. You love diversity. I mean, none of these. I mean, I guess they're all retail, but they're different types of retail. What were those challenges running these different types of companies?
Yeah, business is business for starters. Every form of business is a bit unique, and the one common theme throughout those three adventures that I've had, where they were all convenience retail oriented, if you will. So when I first moved from 7-Eleven to Blockbuster, people said, well, why is he the right guy for Blockbuster? He didn't know anything about movies or DVDs. Well, I didn't look at Blockbuster as a DVD rental business. I looked at Blockbuster as a convenient access to media entertainment business.
Gotcha.
So whether you're selling hot dogs and Slurpees or movies, making movies available to the public, or games or TV shows, it's all about making it convenient. So therefore, taking Blockbuster from physical stores to what a program we had called Total Access, which was, if you want it by mail, we've got it by mail. You want it in a kiosk, we've got Blockbuster kiosks. You want store, come to the store. You want streaming, we've got streaming. We acquired a company called MovieLink to be able to do streaming of new releases, something that Netflix still can't do. So yeah, we set out to make Blockbuster the convenient access to media entertainment location, which is really where it started.
Now, when you were doing Blockbuster, didn't you, with the financing, you were working with the studios directly, right?
Yes.
Were there ever any challenges there working with Hollywood?
Of course.
I know the answer. I just want to
Yeah.
hear it out of your mouth.
Yeah, it was quite challenging. Yeah. And here's the biggest difference. And when I was at 7-Eleven, I was dealing with the CEO of Coca-Cola, the CEO of Pepsi's,
Right.
August Busch at Budweiser. We
Yeah.
want a new product. I sit down with August Busch. We talk about it, come up with a relationship. We were their largest customer. Blockbuster, I discovered you don't just pick up the phone and call the head of Viacom.
Yeah.
You can, but it's not the same. So the media industry was set up with different divisions, and basically our relationship was with the home video division of Sony, Warner, Paramount, etc. So we never really had those top to top relationships, which ultimately hurt. And it hurt both the studios and Blockbuster, because the ultimate killer of Blockbuster was not Netflix. The ultimate killer of Blockbuster was $1 billion of debt in a financial crisis that caused fear among investors, shareholders, employees, and studio partners.
Yeah.
So what ultimately put Blockbuster into restructuring was the very first studio partner. I won't mention their name, but they were all nervous. But one of them took us from 90-day credit terms to cash. So for your audience, what does that mean? It means when we buy a video to go rent, we buy it today. we'd rent it 20 times and we didn't have to pay for it for 90 days. So by the time we pay for that video, it's already paid for itself. It's a beautiful model. It worked for the studios for many years. It worked for us. When the first studio took us to cash terms, then they fell like dominoes.
Yeah.
And within 2 weeks, that one unfortunate change in circumstances pulled $300 million of cash out of our business, just like that, within a 2-week period. And it forced us to have to restructure the business. We had no choice at that point. So was it Netflix that killed Blockbuster? I mean, they were a good competitor, but we were a cash flow machine. 2008 for the year, our projection for the year 2008 was 350 million in EBITDA, in cash flow, basically. We were not a struggling company.
Right.
With the financial crisis and, of course, with things like losing your credit terms, we became a struggling company.
That's tough. You had to see a lot of challenges, though. Was that the biggest challenge of these three companies, you being the CEO? Was that the biggest challenge you had?
That was probably the biggest. It was the most severe because the financial crisis was pretty widespread. I mean, it was not just a domestic crisis, it was worldwide. No one knew what was going to happen. And there's a lot of fear in the marketplace. And fear is the enemy of progress. It's the enemy of individuals, the enemy of corporations.
Yeah. Especially then. I mean, a lot of people watching this probably weren't around for it, but I mean, it was painful for major companies. There's a lot of wealth came out of it, though. A lot of people were able to restructure and come out on the other end, and a lot of people had cash sitting aside, just like they do now. There's a lot of cash sitting on the sideline right now, just waiting for a shoe to drop or both shoes to drop, and they're ready to gobble it up. Now,
change equals opportunity, Joe.
Yeah, exactly. It
really does.
Finding that opportunity. And I think a lot of it's there. We just need to know how to go find it.
Sure.
Do you think your education, could you have taken these roles if you didn't go on to college?
Never.
Yeah.
Not a chance. Not a chance. Now, would I have done okay? Probably.
Sure.
McDonald's offered me a job as a store manager and to go to Hamburger U. It was a vocation in a way, and I might have done well. I might have been CEO of McDonald's. I don't know. I think the probability probably pretty slim.
Did you like working there?
I loved it. Yeah, I learned a lot. Yeah. These jobs like McDonald's or 7-Eleven or Subway, you might think, oh, I don't know, is that beneath me? Here's the way I look at it. A 7-Eleven store is no different than $1 billion corporation. It's just a matter of decimal points.
Yeah.
You get a top line, you've got revenues, you've got expenses, you've got employee issues, you got employee costs. It's just more manageable. It's bite size.
Yeah.
So if you can have the privilege of running a Subway or running a 7-Eleven or any of these smaller operations, it's a great learning experience that can scale into the ability to run a multi-billion-dollar corporation someday.
Here's kind of a broad question. What could have you done better to prepare yourself to be a CEO of these big companies?
I think I could have probably been better on the people side of the business. This is one thing you don't learn in school. Mm-hmm. There's no human resources management class, at least not that I had discovered at business school or undergrad. Yeah. And candidly, in any company, I don't care what it is, the most valuable resource you have isn't the natural resource. It isn't the technology resource. It's the human resource, because ultimately the people around you are going to make you or break you. Yep. And it's critically important. It took me way too long in my career to realize the importance of people and having the right people in the right jobs, and then equipping them with the right tools to be successful.
Yeah.
I could have done that much better.
A lot of big corporations don't seem to realize that, though, right? It's numbers. It's all numbers.
It's numbers. And sadly, and I don't want to be disparaging, but I've been in a lot of companies where the human resource department ends up where, you're not really good at operations, you're not really good at this, so we'll slide you into human resource. They're not necessarily the top performers in the company. Now, that's very inconsistent with the critical importance of that human resource function.
Mm-hmm.
So if CEOs, I don't think I'm alone as a CEO and not realizing this until too late in my career. There are some CEOs that are world class. Former CEO of, well, I won't mention any names. There are CEOs that did this exceptionally well, managing the people side of their business. Companies like PepsiCo
Mm-hmm.
did a great job, I think, with training, leadership development, managing that human resource development throughout the years. I saw it in Frito Lay. I saw it in each of their divisions that they would have. Um, Other companies, not so much.
Yeah.
It's just there. It's a function.
Yeah. Yeah. It's the human connection is very powerful. Let's talk about your book, Education is Freedom. That's why we want to do this video, but I had to pick your brain first, right? I know everybody's going to want to hear about your success. What made you want to write this book? There it comes. There it is.
Like magic.
You happen to have a copy. I see a few of them on your desk too.
Right here. Yeah. um, Here's why I wrote the book. Started out actually as a foundation, an effort that I made while at 7-Eleven to find a way to reach into communities where I saw so many people with such high potential, but not able to unlock those opportunities. And so I saw this as a pure supply and demand challenge. Corporations, the demand for an educated workforce. The supply is our public school system. Mostly, that's where the greatest pool of potential resources exists. And yet, there's a disconnect. Corporations tend to not be involved in the public school system. Public school systems are financed by state and local government. And so I was a poster child. I was one of those kids that, gee, I wish McDonald's had reached into my public school and shown me the path to be a CEO of a big company like McDonald's, but they never did. And so I never saw that path. It wasn't defined for me. So we created a foundation called Education is Freedom to go into the public school system and to be able to say, first of all, you can do anything you want to do. Here's the path. Here's the education required to accomplish it. And let us help you. Let us mentor you. Let us give you guidance. Let us help you fill out scholarships and apply to schools. And so that's where it all started. 20 years later, we've had hundreds of thousands of kids come through this program. It's been a very gratifying thing. But many of my friends have said, Jim, this is a message that applies worldwide. We have whole countries that need to know the transformative power of education. Why don't you put together this roadmap for everybody? And it's sort of a guideline, a learning to learn guideline. It's the what, how, and why of education, not just for kids. I started out thinking I was going to write this book for young people, just as we did with the foundation. And then after writing it, or as I was researching the book, I realized, so many of our issues that we have as a corporate employee, as an entrepreneur, relate to the need to keep learning and expand that knowledge that you have. And then dial it even forward. So many of our issues as society, if you think about all of the challenges all over the world, so many of our problems come from ignorance and fear. Somebody's afraid. They're going to do something to me. They're going to take something from me. And we lash out, right? Out of fear. So the antidote to fear is knowledge. Yeah. So that was my mission.
I talk to a lot of parents and they're just not happy with the education system right now. Since you're involved in the education system, are you hearing of any trends or any plans that they're kind of going to kind of get our education system back on track. I mean, because you look globally where we stand, and it's not good right now.
Right, right. First thing I recommend everybody is stop fighting.
Yeah,
We're we're fighting with each other over yesterday's problems. So all of these solutions that people are fighting over are band-aids that we're trying to put on what is a broken system. Our
yeah,
system is arguably was one of the best systems in the world, and yes, there are some issues that need to be addressed. Our numbers are not good,
yeah,
but we're not going to fix it by casting blame or politicizing it or yelling at each other. We're only going to fix it by recognizing that the education system that we built in this country was built over 100 years ago with the intention of mass production of an educated workforce for the industrial age.
mm-hmm.
We are now in the information age, and our education system needs a complete overhaul. It's not going to happen with vouchers. It's not going to happen by yelling at your school board. It's not going to happen by, you know, trying to decide what books we should read and not read.
Right.
It's only going to happen with a concerted effort, just as the industrialists did 100 years ago, to bring change to the education system. To me, that change is at our fingertips today. We have the technology, we have the power, we've transformed entire industries, retail, media, entertainment, space.
Yeah.
We have the power at our fingertips to use technology to make the classroom more engaging, more stimulating, more effective in teaching tools, the power of AI to modify the way we teach based on the way a student is actually learning and to accelerate human learning at the same pace as machine learning. I mean, the power is mind boggling, but it will
Yeah.
never happen by sitting around blaming each other and throwing rocks at each other with the current
And
system.
politicizing it, that's the thing is we
Exactly.
just all got to we all need to get in a room and just,
Exactly.
this is what's best for the future of our country, our kids.
Exactly.
And,
Exactly.
we just, it's tough to watch, but that and making education accessible to everybody. I've talked to, so I've got a foundation, Wire Foundation, and we transitioned it, but before we were giving scholarships to inner city kids to get them off to higher education, either be trade school or college of their choice. But we had kids that were riding a bus 3 hours to get to school every morning because the schools in their area just weren't getting the proper education. Making education accessible to everybody is another key that I think we've got to figure out. Do you have any advice for us on that?
Oh, exactly. Well, you just hit the nail on the head. You got kids in some places riding a school bus for 3 hours.
Yeah,
Light up the bus.
yeah,
The bus can be Wi-Fi capable. Light it up. Make that a 3 hour learning experience. And
yeah,
turn that bus into a magic time machine so those kids can sit there and with screens in the bus can be transported into the OR to watch an operation being happening live instead of
yeah.
sitting in a biology class looking at a static picture in a book.
Right.
Um, all of these things are possible, but as you said, Joe, we will only do it by recognizing the need to come together with solutions, not by criticizing each other and casting blame. The tools are there today. I mean,
Yeah.
if you think about, let me give you an example. During the pandemic, we accelerated technology available for students by as much as 20 years. No one thinks about this.
Right.
Dallas, Texas is an example. 37% of the houses only in the public school system had Wi-Fi access. Only 37%. Today, 100% have because AT&T and others stepped up with hotspots. IBM, Dell, and Apple stepped up with laptops. So these kids are now wired, right? We have another big thing coming. We've got Starlink. We've got this
Yep.
constellation that will light up the four corners of the earth with Wi Fi capability. Now, during the pandemic, these kids all of a sudden had access to digital technology and they hated it, and they would like power through their class, and then they'd go play video games for 4 hours. Why? Video games were engaging, eye-popping graphics, incentivified, um, stimulating. So our goal with technology should be to make the learning process as stimulating as a video game. We can do this. We've proven it with video games. We can hold their attention. So our challenge now is to use technology not to replace the teacher, but to supplement the teacher and make that learning process exponentially more engaging and more interesting and more fun than you and I ever had the experience of having in class.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, we were a different time though. I mean, it was books and that was it. No computers.
None. I had a
No.
borrowed set of encyclopedias versus this is
Yeah.
a portal to unlimited learning right now in my
Yep.
hands.
That's absolutely true.
But
You
we're
know,
not using it. We're not using these tools.
yeah, and that's the thing. It's, AI is going to really change a lot of the education industry very, very quickly, and how they choose to utilize it. I mean, it can really be an asset for teachers. I think it can create more engagement. So I think it's a win-win across the board. Now, one thing I know earlier in the interview, you said that education is reasonable. And, you hear people talking all the time about, oh, it's too expensive. I can't afford to go. I'll be in debt forever. Um, I actually hadn't thought about it the way you were thinking about it. Because, yeah, if I took what I paid, I don't know what it'd be worth now, but it'd be pretty substantial. Um, Now, what are your thoughts on that? How do we get people to understand that, that education, there's value in it?
Got to change the narrative.
Yeah.
We have a very ugly narrative, and unfortunately, it's a popular narrative. It's like,
Mhm.
oh, school's too important, too expensive anyway. You don't go. Well, here's why it's so critically important. Other countries learn from us the power of education. So we've got China that's gone from 40% graduation rates, college graduation rates, up to 60. And in that same period of time since 2012, we went from the high 50s to the low 40s. And this, for global competitiveness, this is critically important. In the midst of all of this, people are all wringing their hands about China and blah blah blah, and oh my gosh, what are they going to do to us? And meanwhile, we're allowing them to blow right by us on the education front. So we've got to change this narrative that education is not as important today. It's more important than ever before. And here's the argument I would give. Everybody's saying, well, with AI, it doesn't really blah, blah, blah. With AI, any given job, any given vocation is vulnerable to being replaced with technology, with a machine, with data. That means human learning has to have the breadth to be able to do more and to pivot if whatever you learn, if you learn to be an airline pilot, if you learn to be, something specific, a trade, that job could go away. So when that job goes away, you have to be able to pivot. So the breadth of learning is going to be way more important into the future. And that's where a college degree is going to be even more valuable in 20 years or 30 years than it is today.
Yep.
So we have to spread the word.
Yeah. Yep. Exactly. And I do think your sphere of influence you gain from being in college, as long as you're working it, like I just kind of went to class and I didn't think about, the future down the road and the network I should be building while I'm in college. And there's a ton of value there too. Jim, one
Yeah,
last question is, if you're a student today just getting started, and I wanted to be like Jim Keys, what is your advice to get to your position? How do I get there?
the very first thing I would say is recognize that your degree is important as a point of differentiation.
Mm-hmm.
So I would encourage a degree, at least an associate's, if not a 4-year degree. I'd encourage them to go to the best school that they possibly can get into because it does make a difference, part of your brand for the rest of your life that you'll have on your resume. But once you have that degree, to recognize that it's a license to learn, that all it does is it gives you the tool set to begin learning. But if you want to progress in your career to be CEO or whatever you want to be, then that ability to keep learning is critically important. So you have to be able to embrace change, have confidence, and have clarity of communications going forward. Those are the three things I recommend. But that's all part of learning to learn.
Yeah. There's one thing that you said you're talking there that stuck with me is a lot of people think that people working in these large companies aren't really entrepreneurs. And I'm listening to you and your story about all the changes you made in these companies. Obviously, you're an entrepreneur. You're not afraid to make change. You're not afraid to take risks. So you have to be an entrepreneur.
You must be. In fact, I washed out of an Ernst and Young Entrepreneur of the Year program when they first started it. And my local audit partner was like, "Oh yeah, we're going to put you up. You're doing some really innovative things, transforming 7-Eleven." And I washed out in the first round, and he was all disappointed. He said, "Yeah, sorry, Jim, but you're a corporate guy. You're not an entrepreneur." And it kind of hurt my feelings. But then I realized, wait, I have to be an entrepreneur. Corporations need entrepreneurs. But here's the irony: corporations, the culture of so many corporations will beat the entrepreneur out of you if you let it,
Yeah.
because they
Yeah.
encourage conformity.
Yeah. The
Think
processes
about
are all systems. Yeah.
think about the very word corporate. Corporate means one body, right?
Yeah.
Uniformity, conforming to the
Yeah.
mass. Entrepreneur means an individualist stepping out of that conformity, right? And so that corporate environment can be deadly in discouraging people from being an entrepreneur. The irony is the corporation needs it as much as the startup company.
That's true. I think, if you look at, when I was listening to some videos on you and how entrepreneurial you were with some of your thoughts, is I believe you're the one that made the decision to put taquitos in the 7-Elevens. And, that's a gold star right off the bat. But what else did
Oh
you do?
yeah.
And I know you had a Slurpee machine in your office, which now I'm going to look into. But
I did.
yeah, but
No,
that
here's
led
the,
to you coming up with a diet Slurpee. You're
it
talking to them.
it did. And here's the issue. It is that the job of innovation, the job of keeping up with change is everybody's job within the
Yeah.
corporation, starting with the CEO. So a lot of CEOs have this mindset that that's not what I do. I'm a management person. I delegate that innovation to somebody down there in the innovation department or the marketing department, the product merchandising department. But the irony is we're all creative. We're all innovators. And so what I found at 7-Eleven, if I could set the tone at the top as I am constantly seeking ways to satisfy my customers better. And the taquito came from Walmart seeing a box of frozen taquitos made by um, a local entrepreneur, and I said, "Wow, I wonder if those could roll on a roller grill." And so
Mm.
we went to our partners and said, "Can you make a taquito that can roll on a roller grill?" And they did. And another example is the aluminum bottles that you have for beer out there now. I found that bottle in a mini bar in Tokyo. It was in their little refrigerator.
Oh,
And I,
man.
I reached in and I found a grapefruit juice that was so cold you could barely hold it. And I thought, wow, what a great package that would be for beer. Took
Yeah.
it back to Anheuser-Busch and Miller and asked them to make that package for us at 7-Eleven. So the idea of innovation, which is the lifeblood of any company, it's how you keep up with change.
Yeah.
It literally is everybody's job, and it can start at the top. There's no reason that the CEO can't be as innovative as someone in the merchandising department.
I absolutely agree. What are the next phase of what GM Keys is going to be doing? What's up next for you?
I'm trying to decide, candidly.
Yeah.
I did not know where this book would take me, and I'm really very pleasantly surprised at where it has taken me. And finding that there's a very robust audience among young entrepreneurs and business people for this idea that knowledge really is a key power for their progression in their company. And so I don't know. I'm
Playing them
keeping
by
my
ear.
options open.
Well, hopefully you'll sell a lot of books, Jim. I'm going to put it up. They'll be on the Joe Killinger website here. I'm always backward here. We're going to put it up on the website so people are going to be able to go in and find it when this video comes out. And we're going to post it up a couple times during the video so everybody will see the book. And thank you very much for taking the time to come on today. I very much appreciate it.
Thank you, Joe. I look forward to continuing the discussion.
You bet you. When I get to Dallas, I'm going to look you up. We'll go grab a coffee. And for those of you watching, thank you for taking the time to watch today. If you have any questions for Jim, put them in the comments down below. I'll make sure that he sees them and we can get back to you. And if you could, please give us a like. If you haven't done so, make sure you subscribe.